After a decade of waiting, they finally said, "I do." But a shocking new audio leak suggests the wedding wasn't for love. It was for a contract. We've all followed the journey of Jenny and Sumit. A story that has stretched across a decade, across continents, and across what felt like an endless ocean of familial disapproval. We watched Jenny leave her life in America behind time and time again, chasing a love that always seemed just out of reach. We witnessed Sumit's struggle caught between the woman he claimed to love and the parents he was culturally bound to obey. Their story was the ultimate will they or won't they of the day universe. And then it happened. A secret ceremony. A tearful exchange of vows and a marriage certificate that seemed to finally validate years of sacrifice. But what if that certificate isn't a symbol of love's triumph? What if it's nothing more than a prop in the most elaborate, long-running deception in reality television history? Before we dive into the evidence that could unravel everything you thought you knew about this couple, do me a quick favor. If you believe there's more to this story than meets the eye, hit that like button right now. Let's send a message that we, the viewers, demand the truth. And make sure you're subscribed with all notifications on, because the Tell-All Tapes is the only channel that dares to pull back the curtain, and you won't want to miss a single revelation as we crack this case wide open. Let's begin by rewinding the tape. Not just a few months, but all the way back to the beginning. The foundation of the Jenny and Sumit narrative has always been built on a series of seemingly insurmountable obstacles. First, there was the initial catfishing where Sumit presented himself as Michael Jones, a handsome Chicago model. This was explained away as a young man's insecurity, a foolish mistake born of fear. But was it, or was it the first test, a way to gauge just how much deception the storyline and by extension the audience could tolerate? It set a precedent from day one. In this story, the truth is malleable. It can be bent, twisted, and repackaged for dramatic effect. The revelation wasn't a deal breaker. It was a plot point. It was season, episode of their personal franchise. Then came the bombshell of Sumit's secret arranged marriage. This was the dramatic climax that propelled them into the day stratosphere. Jenny, heartbroken and betrayed, fled back to America. The audience was outraged. How could he do this? The narrative presented was one of a man trapped by tradition, a victim of his parents' ambitions. His wife was painted as a stranger. The marriage a prison he was desperate to escape for. His true love, Jenny. The ensuing divorce was long, costly, and fraught with legal and familial drama. It provided seasons worth of content. Every tearful phone call, every argument with his parents, every mention of the staggering divorce settlement was another episode, another reason for viewers to tune in. But let's apply our critical lens here. The timing of the reveal was, for lack of a better word, perfect. Just when the catfishing story was losing steam, a new, much larger crisis conveniently emerged to lock in their spot on the next season of The Other Way. The question isn't whether the marriage was real. It demonstrably was. The question is how its existence was leveraged. Was the pain we saw on screen the genuine agony of betrayal? Or was it a carefully curated performance with the truth held back until it could be deployed for maximum dramatic impact on camera? Following the divorce, the narrative required a new antagonist, a new obstacle. Enter the parents, Sadhna and Anil. They became the central villains in the story, the unyielding wall against which Jenny and Sumit's love would be tested. Their objections were fierce and seemingly absolute. The age gap, the cultural differences, the shame it would bring upon their family. We watched countless scenes of Jenny trying to win them over, attempting to be the perfect Indian daughter-in-law, only to be met with cold rejection. We saw Sumit plead, beg, and even threaten to stand up to them, but he always backed down at the last second. For years, this was the cycle. Jenny would issue an ultimatum. Sumit would promise to act. A confrontation with his parents would occur. Soon, it would fold and they would end the season exactly where they started, in a state of romantic limbo. It was a brilliant formula for perpetual television. As long as the parents said no, the central conflict of their story remained unresolved, guaranteeing another season. Another paycheck. The story wasn't moving forward. It was spinning in place. And the network was more than happy to keep capturing the dizzying drama. Was Sumit truly terrified of his parents' disapproval, or was he a savvy performer who understood that parental disapproval was the engine of his entire career? Then came the more creative, almost bizarre roadblocks, the astrologer. Suddenly, the fate of their union rested not on their love or commitment, but on the alignment of the stars. It was a storyline that felt plucked from a soap opera. The family. Astrologers' grave warnings provided a culturally specific and therefore seemingly authentic reason for yet another delay. It was a masterful stroke of storytelling. It shifted the blame from Sumit's indecisiveness and his parents' stubbornness to the will of the cosmos itself. How can you argue with fate? This celestial intervention bought them more time, another season's worth of will the heavens approve tension. But insiders from the reality TV world will tell you that when a storyline is growing stale, producers often look for external unassailable forces to introduce new conflict. Was this a genuine spiritual consultation? Or was it a production-devised plot device, a deus ex machina to extend the narrative when all other avenues of delay had been exhausted? This brings us to the core of our investigation. The piece of evidence that changes everything. It is a piece of audio allegedly captured on a hot mic during a production break. It was leaked to us by a source who has requested absolute anonymity for fear of career-ending retaliation from the network. The recording is short, just a few seconds long, but its contents are explosive. On the tape, a voice that is unmistakably Sumit's can be heard speaking in English. His tone not that of a lovelorn man, but of a businessman discussing a critical negotiation. He is speaking on the phone allegedly to a field producer for the show. The audio is raw, unedited, and for the first time, we may be hearing the real Sumit, the man behind the character he has played for years. The source claims the context was a moment of high tension near the end of a filming block. The will they or won't they storyline had been stretched to its absolute limit. Viewer fatigue was setting in. The online chatter was shifting from poor Jenny and Sumit to this is getting boring. The pressure was on. Here is the direct transcript of what the voice allegedly Sumit says on that call. If we don't get married this season, the story is over. We have to give them the wedding to get the renewal. Let's break that down piece by devastating piece. If we don't get married this season, the story is over. Notice the choice of words. He doesn't say our relationship is over or I'll lose the love of my life. He says the story is over. This is the language of television production. He sees their decade-long relationship not as a life journey, but as a story, a multi-season narrative arc. With a beginning, a middle, and apparently a potential end. The marriage isn't the culmination of his love for Jenny. It's the series finale, or more accurately, the season finale. Cliffhanger required to prevent cancellation. His concern isn't for his heart, but for his storyline. Then the most damning phrase, we have to give them the wedding to get the renewal. Let's be perfectly clear about the pronouns here. We, himself, and Jenny, the stars of the show, give them who is them, not his parents, not their friends. Them is the network, the production company, the executives who sign the checks. He is talking about giving the producers the climax they have been demanding. The Word give implies a transaction. It's not about sharing a sacred moment. It's about providing a product, a deliverable. He is an employee fulfilling a contractual obligation. And what is the goal of this transaction? To get the renewal. This is the smoking gun. This single phrase reframes the entire narrative of their lives for the past decade. The wedding wasn't the goal of their love. It was the prerequisite for a contract renewal for another season of the show. Most likely the lucrative happily ever after. The desperation in his voice isn't the fear of losing Jenny. It's the fear of losing his job. This audio, if authentic, suggests that the secret wedding we all watched was not a spontaneous act of love to circumvent his parents' disapproval. It was a calculated business decision made under extreme duress from their employers. The narrative we were sold was that Sumit finally grew a spine and chose Jenny over his family. The theory this audio presents is that Sumit finally read his contract and chose his career over being written off the show. To corroborate this, we turn to our second piece of evidence. The testimony of a witness, a former crew member on Fiancé, who worked on several seasons of The Other Way, including shoots with Jenny and Sumit. This individual, whom we will call Alex to protect their identity, reached out to us after hearing rumors of the audio leak. Alex's story paints a chilling picture of what goes on behind the scenes, a world where real lives are scripted and emotions are manufactured for ratings. According to Alex, the Jenny and Sumit problem was a well-known issue within the production offices. Alex claims their story had flatlined. We had wrung every last drop of drama out of the parents' disapproval. We filmed the same conversation, the same fight in a dozen different locations. Sumit would say, "I will stand up to them." Jenny would cry. The parents would shout, lather, rinse, repeat. The analytics were showing a decline in viewer engagement during their segments. People were fast-forwarding. In the world of reality TV, that's a death sentence. Alex alleges that there were Heil meetings where the sole topic was how to resolve or reboot the Jenny and Sumit arc. The options were limited. They could be dropped from the franchise, which no one wanted because despite the fatigue, they were still a legacy couple with a huge fan base. Or they needed a narrative climax. Alex stated, and I quote, "The word came down from the network, we need a resolution, a wedding, or a final breakup. The limbo is killing us." The pressure on the field producers was immense, and that pressure was transferred directly onto Sumit and Jenny. They were given an implicit ultimatum. Give us a wedding or your time in the day universe is over. This testimony aligns perfectly with the alleged audio. Sumit's words, "We have to give them the wedding to get the renewal," sound like the desperate echo of the very pressure Alex describes. Alex also sheds light on the supposed secrecy of the wedding. The idea that they hid it from his parents is the whole point, Alex explains. But the idea that they hid it from us, the production, is laughable. That entire secret wedding was meticulously planned from a production standpoint. We needed the right lighting, the right camera angles. The sound had to be perfect. The surprise was for the audience and for the parents. The secrecy wasn't a romantic choice. It was a production necessity to create the most dramatic reveal possible. For the show, Alex claims that Sumit's on-screen anxiety during the wedding sequence was real, but perhaps for reasons other than what we were led to believe. Of course, he was nervous. Alex says he was playing the biggest scene of his career. His and Jenny's future income depended on him pulling off that performance. He had to look like a man torn, a man finally making the choice for love. When in reality, as we all on set suspected, he was a man making a choice for continued employment. The weight of Carrying that deception, of performing that level of emotion on cue would make anyone sweat. And now, let's re-examine the wedding itself through this new cynical framework. Remember the scene, the quiet, unannounced trip to the temple, the simplicity of the ceremony. It was presented as an intimate us against the world moment, but with this new information, it looks different. Was it intimate or was it just a closed set? With only essential crew present to maintain the secret storyline? Was Sumit's emotional vow, "I will not let you go," a promise to his wife or a message to the network executives watching the footage? And what about Jenny? Where does she fit into this theory? Is she a victim, a pawn in a game orchestrated by Sumit and the network? Or is she a willing participant, a co-conspirator in her own story? This is a woman who has given up everything, her home, her family, her savings to be with Sumit in India. Her desperation to get married has been the driving force of her narrative for years. It is entirely plausible that she too felt the pressure. Her life in India, her visa status, her entire existence there was tied to her relationship with Sumit and by extension, their presence on the show. The end of the show could mean the end of her life in India. The theory suggests that the renewal Sumit was talking about wasn't just for another season, but for Jenny's ability to stay in the country. The marriage wasn't just a plot point for television. It was a necessary legal step to secure her residency that had been conveniently delayed until it also served the show's narrative needs. Did she know the alleged motivation behind the wedding? According to Alex, the former crew member, Jenny is smarter than people give her credit for. She's been in this game for years. She knows how it works. To believe she was completely in the dark about the production pressures and the marry or get cancelled ultimatum is naive. They were a team and this was a team decision, a business decision for the family business, which is being Jenny and Sumit from day Fiancé. This brings us to the most powerful motivator of all, money. Let's talk about the economics of being a long-running day Fiancé couple. The initial seasons pay relatively little, around $1 to $2 per episode for the American cast members. The foreign partner technically earns nothing until they get a work permit. But as a couple becomes more popular and moves to spin-offs like Happily Ever After, that pay can increase significantly. More important than the network paycheck, however, is the ancillary income. We're talking about a fortune built on fame. Jenny and Sumit have a massive social media following. Their Instagram accounts are a stream of sponsored posts, brand deals, and affiliate links. Then there's the cameo market. A personalized video message from the couple can earn them hundreds of dollars in just a few minutes of work. They are a brand. The Jenny and Sumit brand is built entirely on the television narrative of their star-crossed love. The show is the engine that drives the entire financial enterprise. Without the show, the brand dies. The sponsorships dry up. The cameo requests dwindle. The fame fades. They don't just go back to being private citizens. They go back to being unemployed. Consider their lifestyle. They are not living extravagantly, but they are living a life completely funded by their reality TV fame. They don't appear to have other jobs. This is their career. So, when you look at the wedding, not through the lens of romance, but through the lens of a financial statement, it makes perfect cold hard sense. The cost of a simple temple wedding is negligible. The potential income from securing a spot on Happily Ever After and continuing to fuel their brand for another year, it is astronomical in comparison. It's the best return on investment they could possibly make. The marriage certificate isn't just a legal document. It's a financial asset. It's the key to another year of relevance, another year of paychecks, another year of being a marketable brand. The narrative we were sold as one of patience and perseverance, of a love that conquered all odds. But the theory presented by the leaked audio and the insider testimony suggests a different story. It suggests a story of narrative fatigue and contractual obligation. A story where the real obstacles weren't parents or astrologers, but declining ratings and the threat of cancellation. In this version, the final desperate act of marrying wasn't a triumph of the heart, but a savvy, if cynical, move to stay on the payroll. The secret they were keeping wasn't their marriage from his parents. It was the true reason for their marriage from the world. We have looked at the history of manufactured obstacles. We have listened to the alleged hot mic recording that seems to expose the entire enterprise. We have heard corroborating testimony from a production insider. And we have followed the money revealing the powerful financial motive that underpins their entire existence as public figures. Each piece of this puzzle clicks together to form a picture that is far more calculated and far less romantic than the one we were shown on television. The image is one of a couple who learned to perform their love for the camera so effectively that they may have forgotten how to distinguish it from the real thing. Or more chillingly, the performance became the real thing, a business partnership dressed in the costume of a romance. But the audio and the insider are just the beginning. The clues, as it turns out, may have been hiding in plain sight all along, woven into their social media, their on-camera interviews, and even in the behavior of the so-called villains of their story, Sumit's parents. What if I told you? There's evidence that suggests their vehement disapproval was just as much of a performance as Sumit and Jenny's love? What if Sadhna and Anil were not obstacles to their son's happiness, but willing participants in the family business, playing the roles they were assigned to keep the storyline and the paychecks alive? The conspiracy may run deeper than just a desperate couple. It may involve the entire family. In the next part of this investigation, we will dissect the parents' role in this alleged sham and analyze the social media slips that could be the final nails in the coffin of their fairy tale romance. We will explore the possibility that the biggest deception in day history wasn't just a two-person job, but a full-blown family affair. The truth is far more complex and far more shocking than you can imagine. Welcome back to the Tell-All tapes. In the first part of our investigation, we laid out the explosive foundation of our theory that Jenny and Sumit's long-awaited marriage was not the culmination of a decade-long romance, but a calculated business decision to secure a contract renewal with the network. We presented two key pieces of evidence. A leaked hot mic recording of a voice sounding identical to Sumit's, explicitly stating they had to give them the wedding to get the renewal, and a corroborating testimony of a former crew member who described the immense pressure from the network to create a narrative climax for a storyline that had grown stale. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. We focused on the couple themselves, on their motivations, their potential desperation, and the financial empire they stood to lose. Now, we are going to go deeper because the theory suggests this wasn't just a two-person operation. For a deception of this magnitude to be sustained for this long, it would require more players. It would require accomplices. And what if the most crucial accomplices were hiding in plain sight, playing the most important roles of all? What if the greatest villains of the story, the unyielding, immovable obstacles to Jenny and Sumit's happiness, his parents, Sadhna and Anil, were never really obstacles at all? What if they were in fact co-conspirators? Let's deconstruct the roles of Sadhna and Anil. For years, they were the narrative engine of this entire saga. Their fierce, unwavering opposition to the relationship was the central conflict. Without them, the story had no tension. Sumit's struggle was defined by his inability to stand up to them. Jenny's suffering was defined by her failure to win their approval. They were the perfect antagonists. But were they too perfect? Let's re-examine their performance with a critical eye. Their objections were always the same. The significant age gap, Jenny's inability to bear children, and the social shame, or what will people say? It's a culturally valid set of concerns in many traditional Indian families, which lent their storyline a powerful air of authenticity. It was believable because on the surface it was culturally plausible. But reality television is a master of using cultural plausibility as a mask for manufactured drama. The question isn't whether their concerns were real on some level. The question is whether the intensity and relentlessness of their on-screen opposition were an authentic reflection of those concerns or a dramatically enhanced performance delivered for the benefit of the cameras. Think about the structure of their scenes. They followed a predictable, almost theatrical formula. Step 1, Jenny and Sumit decide to approach the parents with a renewed sense of optimism. Step 2, Jenny attempts a gesture of goodwill, making chai, touching their feet, offering a gift. Step 3, the parents reject the gesture, often with a cold stare from Sadhna, or a weary sigh from Anil. Step 4, the conversation begins calmly but quickly escalates into a shouting match. Sumit makes a half-hearted attempt to defend Jenny before inevitably capitulating. Step 5, tears. Jenny cries, Sumit looks defeated, and the parents storm off. Their authority absolute. This cycle repeated itself season after season. Was this the recurring tragedy of a genuinely intractable family conflict? Or was it the rehearsed blocking of a scene that production knew would deliver dramatic results every single time? In theater, this is called a motif. In television, it's called a reliable format. The family had found their formula, their hit song, and they played it on repeat for years because it kept them on the air. Our insider, Alex, sheds more light on this. The parents were in many ways easier to direct than Sumit and Jenny. Alex claims they understood their roles implicitly. Sadhna, in particular, knew exactly what the cameras wanted. The producers would simply say, okay, in this scene, Sumit is going to tell you he still wants to marry Jenny. And she knew her lines without needing a script. She knew she had to express outrage, disappointment, and threaten to disown him. Whether she felt that exact level of rage in that exact moment was irrelevant. She was playing her part. We would do multiple takes of the same argument to get the best camera angles, the most dramatic reactions. Real spontaneous fights don't have coverage from 3 different camera angles. This testimony is chilling. It suggests that the scenes we watched, believing them to be raw, fly-on-the-wall documentary footage, were in fact closer to pre-planned semi-improvised dramatic scenes with actors who had become experts at playing themselves. Let's consider the motivation. Why would Sadhna and Anil agree to be portrayed as the cold, cruel villains in their son's life? Story on international television? The answer, once again, may be brutally simple. It was good for the family business. While Sumit and Jenny were the stars, Sadhna and Anil became iconic supporting characters in the day universe. Their fame, or infamy, grew with each season, but more importantly, their son was earning a foreign salary, a substantial income that likely benefited the entire household. In the complex tapestry of family dynamics, particularly in a culture where familial duty is paramount, it is not a stretch to theorize that the parents saw this as their contribution to their sons and the family's financial success. They were willing to sacrifice their public image to secure their family's financial future. In their minds, they may not have been lying. They may have been making a noble sacrifice. They were playing the villains on TV so their son could be a hero in the bank. This reframes their on-screen cruelty not as hatred for Jenny, but perhaps as a bizarre transactional form of love for their son. Now, let's look for the cracks in their performance. The moments where the mask slipped. While the editors of the show did a masterful job of highlighting the conflict, eagle-eyed, viewers have noticed inconsistencies over the years. There were fleeting moments, brief glimpses of something other than animosity, a shared, subtle smile that was quickly hidden. A moment of quiet off-script conversation in the background of a scene. These moments were rare, edited around, but they were there. Were these the moments of genuine family dynamic peeking through the cracks of the manufactured narrative? The theory suggests that off-camera, the relationship between Jenny and her in-laws was likely far more civil, perhaps even cordial, than we were ever led to believe. The high-volume drama was switched on when the cameras were rolling and switched off when the crew packed up for the day. This brings us to the next layer of our investigation, the digital breadcrumbs left on social media. In the world of reality TV, a tightly controlled on-air narrative can often be completely undermined by a single careless social media post. And in the case of the Sumit and Jenny saga, there have been several such slips that fans have pointed to as evidence of a deeper deception. A few years ago, before the on-air wedding and subsequent reconciliation, a photo briefly surfaced on a distant relative's Facebook page. The photo reportedly showed Sumit, Jenny, Sadhna, and Anil all attending a family function, a puja or a small festival. They were not screaming or crying. They were standing together smiling. They looked for all the world like a normal family. The photo was deleted within hours, but not before screenshots were taken and circulated among fan groups. The explanation when addressed was that it was an old photo or that they were simply being civil for the sake of the event. But the image planted a seed of doubt. If the animosity was as deep and irreconcilable as the show claimed, would such a peaceful, happy photo even be possible? Their own social media provides further clues. Look at who follows whom. Look at the likes. There have been instances where Sadhna through a private but traceable account has liked a post of Jenny's or a supportive comment left by a fan. These small actions seem insignificant, but in the context of our theory, they are potential tells. They are the digital equivalent of a Freudian slip. They suggest a level of off-screen acceptance and online surveillance that contradicts the on-screen narrative of total shunning. Why would a mother who has supposedly disowned her son and despises his wife be keeping such close tabs on her social media, occasionally letting a positive interaction slip through? Is it the act of a hateful mother-in-law, or is it the act of a business partner checking in on the company's public F-facing brand? Even Sumit's brother, Amit, and his wife play a key role in this alleged theater. They were always presented as the reasonable ones, the mediators, the bridge between the two warring factions. Their role was to express concern, to offer seemingly wise counsel, and to explain the cultural nuances to the audience. But what if their role was actually to be the exposition device? They were the ones who could calmly explain why the parents were so upset, thereby reinforcing the legitimacy of the central conflict. They would sit with Jenny and patiently validate her feelings while simultaneously validating the parents' position, ensuring that the conflict remained perfectly, symmetrically balanced, and thus could continue indefinitely. Their mediation never actually solved anything. It simply restated the problem in a calmer tone, giving the storyline an air of complexity and depth while ensuring the fundamental stalemate remained in place for the next season. The entire family, it seems, had been cast in their roles, the star-crossed lovers, the evil parents, and the reasonable siblings. It was a perfectly balanced ensemble cast for a long-running family drama. Let's fast forward to the post-wedding reality. After the secret wedding was revealed on the show, the narrative required a new direction. The old conflict had been resolved, so a new one had to be created. This led to the storyline of the parents' eventual grudging and highly conditional acceptance of the marriage. Sadhna's statement that she would accept the marriage but never forget that they would be part of the family but never fully embraced was a masterstroke of narrative preservation. It wasn't a resolution. It was a modification of the conflict. It was the writers of a TV show saying, "We've ended the will they get married storyline and now we are launching the new will she ever be a real daughter-in-law storyline." It was a pivot, a reboot, designed to create a whole new set of dramatic possibilities for happily ever after. The acceptance felt less like a genuine emotional breakthrough and more like a necessary plot point to move the story into its next phase. It was the family business adapting to a changing market now with the marriage and a form of parental acceptance secured. Look at their lives. It is a life lived entirely for the cameras and the social media audience that the show provides. Their Instagram feeds are a carefully curated mix of candid romantic moments, sponsored posts for products, and constant promotions for their episodes of Day Fiancé. They are not just living their lives. They are producing their lives for public consumption. Every vacation, every meal, every festival is a potential piece of content. This is not a criticism. It is an observation of their business model. Their love story is their product and the marriage was the ultimate product launch. The parents' acceptance was the first major software update. So, let's put all the pieces together. We have the foundational theory built on the leaked audio suggesting the wedding was a contractual obligation. We have the insider testimony that paints a picture of a stale storyline and immense network pressure. We have a re-examination of the parents, Sadhna and Anil, recasting them not as antagonists, but as willing participants in the family business, playing villainous roles for the camera to ensure the family's financial stability. We have the digital evidence, the social media slips, and deleted photos that hint at a far more civil off-screen reality. And we have the post-wedding narrative pivot which conveniently created a new sustainable conflict just as the old one was resolved. When you look at the entire year saga through this lens, it transforms. It is no longer a messy, drawn-out emotional love story. It becomes a brilliant long-form piece of improvisational theater, a masterclass in narrative manipulation performed by an entire family. It's a story about a group of people who stumbled into reality TV fame and discovered that the key to longevity was not to resolve their problems, but to manage them, to sustain them, and to perform them with just the right amount of emotional intensity to keep the audience hooked and the network checks coming. The genius of the operation is its very similitude. It feels real because it's built around a kernel of truth, an age gap relationship, some level of parental concern that has been strategically amplified and exaggerated into a multi-season international television spectacle. The final question then becomes, where does the performance end? In reality begin? After a decade of playing these roles for the cameras, for the fans, for the money, is there a line anymore? Is Sumit still able to distinguish between his feelings for Jenny and his duty to the storyline? Does Jenny see Sumit as her husband or as her co-star and business partner? When Sadhna looks at Jenny, does she see a daughter-in-law or a key character who ensures the family's relevance? These are questions we may never be able to answer. But the evidence we've presented today suggests that the narrative we have been sold is at best a highly embellished version of the truth and at worst a complete and total fabrication from start to finish. A sham. A wedding that wasn't for love but for a contract. A family feud that wasn't about shame but about securing a paycheck. A love story written, produced, and directed for television. Was it true love or just good television? You decide. Do you believe their marriage is a sham? Get this video to likes if you want us to send this audio to a voice analysis expert to verify if that is in fact Sumit Singh on the call. The more support we get, the deeper we can dig. And make sure you subscribe and hit that Notification bell because here at the Tell All Tapes, we believe the truth is always more interesting than the script. And the truth is about to be exposed.